If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
We've got a very welcome guest back again today with Brendan Bergin, here to chat to us today about 10 ways to get the most out of a training session. How are you today, Brendan?
Yeah, pretty good. Good.
Brendan, really looking forward to this, getting the most out of a training session. You know, people pay money to go to a coach, so if they can get the most out of a training session, it's better value for them. It's better value to think about that they're getting a little bit further, you know, for that one training session, that they're getting along
Absolutely.
like 1.5 if they really make the most out of it, or even 2 or 3, you know, if rather than just coming, turning up, doing the lesson, coming back next week. If there's lots of things that I know you've got in your notes here for them to do. But look, before we go, just need to have a quick reminder about the vision for International Horse College. Now, if you've got the same vision, which is to have a world where people safely appreciate, respect and enjoy their horses, and the horses appreciate, respect and enjoy their people, then have a look at the website at internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now, Brendan, these training sessions, the first tip you've got is remember that we're coaching the horse. Are we coaching the horse, coaching the rider? Is the rider coaching the horse? Just clarify that a little bit more.
I always think of it as slightly hierarchical in a way. Like usually my role is that I'm the coach. So my job as the coach is to help the rider be in the right mental state, have the right tools at their disposal so they can coach their horse or help the horse learn. So you can't ever make anyone or anything learn. You have to create the circumstances so that the person or horse can do the right thing. So in days of old training both horses and riders, it was a very forced, it was a very military approach.
Yep.
And I suppose I always think that if you think of it more like I've got to create the right circumstance, it's kind of like what the old horsemen used to say, make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think it's often misinterpreted when they say that what people hear is make the wrong thing difficult. You have a license to beat your horse up when they do the wrong thing. Whereas it should be much more focused on make the right thing easy. Like when you're starting coaching a new rider-horse combination, you don't go and put up 1.20 m and go, right, go jump that. You see them over a pole. You see them over a small vertical, a bigger vertical, and then you're working towards 1.20 m. Even if they've told you, I'm out jumping 1.60 m, the first thing you do is you put them over a pole on the ground. If they can't do a pole on the ground, they can't go forward from there. Yep. And I think remembering that horses have confidence issues and that sort of thing. Like my event horse is super brave. But the reason why she's super brave is we always start off everything easy, and we focus on the speed and we focus on the direction. We make sure I'm not in such a way that I'm going to catch her going over a fence. I think if you really think of coaching the horse and coaching them like a nervous rider, you suddenly change the whole game.
Yeah, yep.
I think that's really important.
Yep. All right, now I know that we often talk about a good frame of reference. So we're talking about a good frame of reference to evaluate the training and to measure improvement. So can you talk us through that again? And, you know, I know sometimes, Brendan, you know, you might say, look, I've talked about this before, but you talk about the important things. So someone doesn't come for a lesson and you say, well, this is what it is. The next week you don't say, well, I'm going to refuse to teach you that because I already taught it last week. You teach it again because it's important.
Yeah, well, there's a lot, like, the thing is with horses, there's a lot of repetition because there's very limited, there's very limited compute cycles in a horse's brain is the way I always think about it. So you've got to keep it simple.
Yep.
And the most important thing to remember for us is, as coaches, we have to give the rider a method of measuring where they are to increase the maintenance of what they understand. And it means then they can achieve personal bests regularly, because it's really important, if you want to keep your clients, that you have ways of showing them that you are useful. Because in the end of the day, there's economics to what we do. And, if people aren't getting their kicks from you, they'll go and get their kicks from someone else who maybe is easier pleased or something. Anyway, so my frame of reference I use is exactly the same as what I say all the time. I'm sure people are sick of hearing it, but anyway, I'll do it anyway. I always think of William Micklem's Constants and Variables, the German scale of training, and the Equitation Science International principles of horse learning. So the constants are acceptance, calmness, forwardness, straightness, and purity. The variables are direction, speed, impulsion, balance, and timing. The German scale of training is rhythm, suppleness, contact, impulsion, straightness, and collection. And the ESI shaping scale is basic attempt, obedience, rhythm, straightness, contact, and proof, unless it's changed since I last looked at it, which it probably hasn't. So I suppose when you think of those things, it's very easy if maybe the constants aren't good, but it's very easy maybe then to go over to the shaping scale, and maybe they're higher up the shaping scale than they were the last time. I think it's really important to be quite good at our craft as coaches to make sure, even when things are not looking good, there's always achievement to be found. And I suppose it's not good enough to tell the client that you were brilliant because you rode well. You've got to be able to produce the evidence, because people don't want to just be pandered to. They want to see where their improvement is.
Yep. Now, as a coach, we need to do our homework. When you talk about doing our homework, is it us as an instructor or a coach to teach people to get the most out of the training session, or is it the people that are doing the training session should be doing some homework in between, so they don't just come along, finish their lesson, come up a week later and not do anything in between?
Well, it's kind of both, and I have a sort of slightly different slant on the do your homework idea. In that, when I put that down, what I more meant is, if you decided, Glenys, right, I'm going to go and I'm going to start doing some barrel racing, because I'd say you've probably never done barrel racing, have you?
Yeah, I have actually. I've done a bit of everything.
Well, we need to find something you haven't done. But okay, suppose you're going to do some skydiving. Have you ever done skydiving?
Yep.
You've done that as well? Okay, yeah. Right. Okay. I've never gone skydiving. Well, use me.
Okay.
You're not a very useful subject, Glenys, because you don't.
I know.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so I've never done skydiving before. So before I go and do skydiving, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up and figure out what it is that we're doing, whatever. So for someone who's starting off eventing or whatever, they've got to find out, when they're starting off with an EI 80 or EI 90, what sort of obstacles are they going to meet? What sort of speeds are they going to have to be going? And how are they going to develop a goal framework to get to that goal? So sometimes that's going to involve getting onto Google. Sometimes it's going to involve getting into your rule book, into your horsey books. Sometimes it's going to involve getting into your coach and finding out from your coach, what do they see as the roadmap? Like I know I do that with my coach a lot. I have 3 coaches that I use and for me, and I lean on them. So for example, I have my cross-country coach, and I'll go, right, okay, what do I need to work on for the next week until I see you again? And she will give me the homework I need to do. But then on top of the homework that she's given me, I will also go and research the stuff that we're doing. So she says, right, I want you to go off into the forest, and I want you to go and pop her all over a few ditches, and just get her used to the feeling of popping a few ditches. I will go and look up different ways of training ditches, along with the way she does, so that when I come back to her, I have more to bring to the table. If you do a lot of work and research at home, as long as your coach doesn't feel easily threatened, you can come with a lot more information, and as such can glean a lot more from a lesson if you can come with a bit more.
Yep. No, that's good. I think that's explained it. And I think that really, I'm thinking the people that I teach do that. They go up and they say, last week we were talking about this. I'm just wondering, is this relevant or is that relevant? And they progress so much quicker because they're
the most
doing
rewarding
that.
people to teach,
Yeah, they're not just doing what I've asked them to do, but they've really gone out and explored the whole idea of it. So, yeah.
And they're the ones that are going to get the real competition success, because
Yes.
with the best will in the world, we're all limited. Like, I sat there at a convention about a month ago watching Yogi Breisner helping people through exercises, real riding club people through exercises. And I looked at him and I went, oh my God, there is just so much going on there that I would never have even thought. And all he had down were poles on the ground. Like, he had trolley poles going across the arena, a few other poles, and just the way he stitched everything together was pure, unbridled magic. And by the end, we said, look, if you can ride all these lines, you can go to badminton. This is that they're all the skills you need to go to badminton. All you have to do in badminton is jump the fences.
Yep.
Which, it sounds like funny to say, but it's absolutely true. Like, it's all about that base unit at work.
Yep. I can see that. A coach that can see the big picture, is that one that's looking at badminton?
Not necessarily. I suppose what I think of is, again, coaches have different roles. Sometimes you're the instructor, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're the invisible man on the side that asks a question. I think it's important for coaches to be able to go a couple of things. Like, I think it's important as a coach, like I just said, coaches are limited, to know if you've come to the end of the road with someone. Because sometimes you come to the end of your skill with someone, and maybe you need to pass them on to someone else so that they can progress.
Yep.
And I've done that in the past. I've passed people on to someone else, and then, like a boomerang, they've come back, and a year later, they're in a different place, and now I'm back on. I'm tagged back in again, and I have something to offer them again, whereas I didn't have something to offer them because of the limit of my skill. I think it's important not to be afraid as a coach, to be afraid that we have skill limitations. And I think when you're selecting a coach, the problem with coaching is that there's a lot of fashion in coaching, in terms of some coaches will be very fashionable. I will never be fashionable, because coaches that try and speak logic and reason at all times are not fashionable, because we won't have this flashiest exercise that someone else is using. I'm certainly not willing to push the horses beyond a limitation.
Yeah.
So it's important that I always select a coach that's more middle of the road. I tend not to go to super flashy coaches. I tend to go to coaches that I feel fit the deficiency that I don't have. And the other thing I always think is, go to someone qualified, go to someone who goes to regular continual professional development, because if they're not developing, how do you expect them to develop you?
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So that's supposed to be the big picture. And a coach that, like, they don't necessarily, like, sometimes a coach can be really useful in developing you towards a cross-country goal, even if they haven't competed to a really high level. Maybe they've got a really good eye. The skill in coaching is very different from the skill in riding. And to go to someone who is a super top-class rider might mean that they have that innate gift of riding, which means they cannot teach that to you because they have it innately. The best coaches are the ones that have had to really work at developing their skills themselves. Like, it's interesting, my cross-country coach is, her name is Melanie Rinn. And Melanie is quite short and is quite a different shape of rider to me. Because I'm relatively tall, long in the leg, where she's quite short in the leg. And what she's had to do is she's had to develop her coaching skills so that she can see the big picture, to be able to understand how someone tall works. Same way as when I'm coaching, because I'm tall and longer legged, I've had to work to understand how someone short works. Because it's a different balance. Like, for me, there's a lot more to coordinate in the vertical sense than someone else.
Yep.
Whereas if you're really short, everything is quite compact. You don't have maybe the length of leg to give you that stability when you have an oh crap moment.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyway, so I think it's important to have a coach that understands you cannot push everyone into the one mold.
Yep. Now, When you say do a regular SWOT and SMART analysis, SWOT, SMART analysis, what are we analysing, and can you explain the SWOT analysis and the SMART analysis or SMART goals?
Yeah, I can, of course. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we'll talk about that first. So it comes from business, and it's about creating opportunities to make your company successful. It's exactly the same with your riding. So I think of it as SWOT of skills, and then there's SWOT of goals. So your SWOT of skills are, where are the strengths in my riding? So, for example, for me, the strengths in my riding lie in that I tend to understand what needs to happen a lot, and I tend to think a lot, which forms my weakness. My weakness is I want it to be perfect. And I can go to extraordinary lengths if my coach doesn't sort of say, come on, Brendan, just go over the damn thing. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. Get the horse down. It doesn't matter if it's a 5-star. If the horse comes down in 6, you're going to survive eventing. If you insist on the 5 and the horse is wrong for it, they're going to kill you. So that's one of my weaknesses. My opportunities, I always think of opportunities as sometimes really useful opportunities will come up. And for me, useful opportunities come up out hacking all the time. So, for example, on one of my hacking routes, I have to go over a motorway. Sometimes there's a lot of traffic on it, especially in the wet weather. And that noise creates this distraction for my horse. So the opportunity is to walk the horse down the line and keep them straight, as if I was coming down to a big scary jump and there was a crowd of people, usually at the water. And then threats for me are my own brain, trying to make things perfect too much, trying to often overthinking it. Like there's always thoughts rolling around in my head, crashing into each other and pushing me off kilter. So I suppose that's the way I think of with the SWOT analysis for your riding. And when you identify your weaknesses, you're trying to strengthen them. When you identify your opportunities, you're trying to make use of them. And when you identify your threats, you try to tackle them as head on as you can. And I suppose it's really important to just regularly do, like what I do is I have, again, people have heard my chats before, I have a little book where I write down stars and wishes, which we will talk about later. And I write down once a month. When I come to the end of a month, I write down my SWOT of where I am and where my horse is. So I can identify the goals going forward. So then that moves us on to the SMART analysis of goals. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and then time. So my goal is ultimately I want to go and do a 3-star eventing course. Now that is probably 2 years away at the moment with the horse I have at the moment. So the goal is specific. I want to do a 3-star. I know where I want to do it. So you have to have that specificity. We have measurable small goals to get there. So for eventing, if you want to do a 3-star, obviously you're going to need to do a 2-star, you're going to need to do a 1-star, and then you're going to have to do your national comps. So you're going to be doing your EI 100, you're going to be doing your EI 90, EI 80. I'm not sure what that is in Australia. I'm in the Irish system, so you'll have to go and Google it. And those are achievable. So my horse at the moment is out doing EI 1, well, when this coronavirus goes away, is going out and doing, it will be starting off at EI 100. By the end of the season, we should be doing an EI 110, which will bring us into 2-star. So you have to have those achievable goals, and you got to be realistic about it. Like if you're riding Dobbin the Cob, it is highly unlikely, no offense to Dobbin the Cob, that Dobbin the Cob is going to do a 3-star anytime. It's just not going to happen. He can absolutely hunt a trial. He can absolutely go up to try EI 100, but it's just not realistic or fair to expect that. It's like expecting your 80-year-old grandmother to go and run a marathon for the first time. Look, it could be done, but it probably wouldn't be advisable. And then you have to have a time scale. So I have my 3-star goal is on a 2-year time frame. That's where I'm thinking of it for that horse. And again, I've discussed that with my coaches, and they all feel that 2 years is reasonable. I suppose it's really important just to regularly look back and see where are we at, how far are we along, and break everything into small bite-sized goals that can be done.
I suppose that brings us to the next one, about increasing your skill every day, not being a slave to the plan, because before you've talked about breaking things down, but increasing a skill every day. Just explain how we're going to do that.
Okay, so skills come in a few different things. So there is horse skill, there's rider skill, and some of the skills for both are, like for horses, it's nearly always physical because we have no way of measuring their mental development, really.
Yet.
Yes. Yes. Sure, we might be able to read their minds eventually, and it might be a scary thought. But anyway, so for me, most of my skills that I work to develop are mental centric focus sort of stuff, keeping myself on track, like we talked about in the SWOT analysis. So you got to think of, what are we working on today? And I think sometimes people can go, right, I'm going to work on a 20-meter circle today.
Yes.
And working on a 20-meter circle today isn't helpful, generally. What's much more helpful to go is, first of all, I'm going to work on getting my horse straight. Then I got to work on getting my horse to bend, and then I've got to get my horse on the line that I want. That way, again, I'm always thinking from the eventing perspective. That way, you have a skill that is then transferable to riding a bending line down to a double of corners. If you can, and I suppose that's what identifies things as skills rather than activities. A skill is something that can be carried forward somewhere else. So, for example, when I go out hacking, my horses do a lot of hacking. We do a lot on the road because I find it really helpful. And I work on suppleness on the road. I do my shoulder ins, I do my leg yields. But when I'm doing my shoulder ins and leg yields, I'm doing it along a specified line. So I'm not just practicing shoulder in, I'm practicing the skill of putting my horse on the line I want. So when the road is quiet, I'll go, right, I'm going to put the right front leg on the white line. I'm going to put the left front leg on the right white line. I'm going to put it to the right of the line, left of the line. If I'm cantering along down a lane, I'm going to put the horse's foot in that puddle. It's all those sort of skills development of, from an eventing perspective, I always think it's about putting the horse where you need them to be so that they have the right circumstances to be able to do their job. And I suppose that's what I always think of when I'm trying to develop skills. Rather than going, I'm going to do shoulder in today, I'm going to jump 1.10 meter today, I'm going to ride a 20-meter circle today. It's not enough to just do that. You have to be going, what skill is being developed in that process?
Yep. No, so I can see that you're breaking down the plan to increase the skill each day, but you're continually improving the quality. Now, this don't be a slave to the plan, though. What's that?
Sometimes you'll go out with the idea that we're gonna work on straightness, or we're gonna work on this, and you come out, you go into the arena, you go out for your hack, and it's not working. Sometimes when things aren't working, you have to bash through them and, break down the wall and work through them. But there's a lot of times when, if you plan to, say, work 20-meter circles and get the horse going well on the 20-meter circle to develop the skill of getting the horse on the line, getting the bend, whatever, sometimes you find that maybe you've got to move away from that plan for a while, maybe a few minutes. Maybe you've got to move away from it for a period of time. So, for example, for my horse, one of the things that she is crap at is her walk. Her walk is she's just one of these horses that she gets really tight in it. So for a stupid 6 weeks, I decided, right, you're going to learn to walk. And this was a better way of putting it is, I came at it from the point of view is, I am going to learn you to walk.
Yes.
And when you come in with that idea that you're going to learn them, you're going to make them do it, it's a disaster. So I was at a training day with a guy called Christoph Hess. I was just watching. And I came and spoke to him about my horse and said, I can't get her to overtrack in the walk. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm walking. He said, no, don't walk. And I went, what do you mean don't walk? I need her to walk. He said, no. You need her to connect and canter. So I went home that evening and got on her and cantered her round and round and round and did exactly what he said, cantered her, long rein, loose rein. And lo and behold, horse walked.
Yep.
Exactly the way she should.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by don't be a slave to the plan. Like, I got stuck in the idea of I'm going to make you walk. Whereas it was completely the wrong end of the telescope. And I just wasted 6 weeks of my time trying to do something, when if I just, put my lateral thinking hat on, I probably could have come up with go on canter. And if I was watching someone else, I probably would have said, oh, let's just leave that for a minute, go and have a canter, or let's go do some shoulder in or leg in. And then as it sort of unfolds in my head, I sort of started going, I should be leg yielding her in the walk. I should be using shoulder in the walk to try and, stretch and open and connect. And now the walk is still fragile, but we're able to walk now. But we just do it at the end of a session rather than the beginning.
Being responsible. You've got a note here. Remember who's responsible for what. So just explain that a little bit more. Who's in the picture when you say who's responsible for what.
Okay, I suppose it depends on the day. So some days it's just you and your horse in the picture because you're not on a coach for that day. So when that is happening, you're only responsible for 4 things. And the rider is only ever responsible for 4 things. And people who have heard other chats of mine have heard these a few times. The first thing is they have to look and plan. So you have to look where you're going and you have to know what you're doing. So, even if you're walking large around the arena, to say you're walking large around the arena is not enough. You have to go, right, I'm walking between 2 imaginary tracks or whatever it is. You have to get the speed right for whatever the task is. So if you're herring across cross country to jump the big scary tricaner, I'm always talking about tricaners, or maybe I've got a complex about them. You need to make sure the horse is coming well enough that they can clear it, but also coming steady enough that they can get a good look at it and see the big scary ditch that's underneath the big scary log. You got to get the direction right. You got to make sure the horse knows, that you communicate with the horse. This is where you're to go. And then your position balance has to be good enough to absorb the jump or not block the shoulder in or whatever it is. And then very simply, the horse is responsible for everything else. We can't make them lift their legs off the ground. Well, I suppose we probably could, but it's not going to be advantageous to us later to do things like make them lift their legs off the ground or whatever. They've got to figure that out themselves. And then the coach's job, if the coach is there from the outside, is the coach is the supervisor, the overseer, the manager, the person who is looking after the big picture. Again, I was actually at I'm always going to talks and training days, a training day with a guy called Kieran Glynn, he's an Irish eventer. He's evented internationally, and he's now moving more into a coaching role. And he said something very interesting, like coaches can be very stuck in the idea that they are coaching that person on that day. And you are to a certain extent, but he said, as a coach, you're also the team manager. So you've got to sort of ask the question, like if someone's going eventing, are you getting in your fitting work? What fitting work are you doing? No, you need to be doing this fitting work. You have to be looking after the big picture. I suppose that is one of the things coaches have to do, is you can't disclaim yourself away into, I was only coaching what you were at today. You've got to be looking at the big picture of where they're going and making sure they're putting in that groundwork, foundation work, that they'll be able to do the job that they've told you they want to do. So I suppose that's what I mean by who's responsible for what, because we've all got our responsibilities. We've also got things that we are not responsible for, and we can't take up the mantle for everything.
Okay, now the horse, what are they responsible for?
Everything else. They've got to, when we set up the speed and point them at something, they've got to jump it. When we move them into shoulder in and have them moving along nicely, they've got to continue in cruise control. Again, lots of what I say sort of comes back to things like Andrew McLean has said and John McLean has said. It's about installing these habits into the horse, that the horse can take over when we get into trouble. And again, Andrew and Jonna have both evented a lot. So I suppose that's why that's come into their system, because when you're out eventing, you need two brains looking after your collective mortality. Because there was a lady died recently. I think it was the United States or Canada, and it brought home to me how important it is to train the horse to look and think for himself, to be able to assist the rider when things go wrong.
Yes.
And you've evented as well.
I have done.
You know that yourself.
Absolutely.
When you're coming down to a big scary thing, and you feel you're wrong, you kind of need the horse to take over and go, "It's okay, Mum. It's okay, Dad. I've got this. I know what we've done. Loads of these. I know what to do." And you're there going, "I'll just hang on to the next strap and hope for the best." But the best in the world, it happens to every eventer, that there's times when we're wrong and the horse has to help us out.
Yeah, definitely. And nice to have a nice, sensible horse, which goes back to your basic training, that you're not over-facing your horse. You're teaching your horse to jump more confidently rather than just jump higher.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. Now, using equipment, I know that you love pods, so we're just going to explain what pods are, because I didn't know what they were when you first started talking about pods. But we're going to use equipment to evaluate progress, so pods or whatever else, but how can we evaluate our progress?
Okay, so there's different things you're trying to evaluate. So as you rightly said, like, I'm big into these pods. They're like little flat football cones that squash if the horse stands on them so they can't hurt themselves. So as a coach, as a rider, I use them all the time to develop accuracy. So I'll use them. We always talk about 4 points on a circle, 20-meter circle. So I'll put out 4 pods at the 4 points to bring my client's attention. I'll use them for riding through to go over a fence or whatever. But that's not the only equipment we need to be using. So you've got to figure out, is my horse riding down a 12-foot canter stride? So you put out your 2 poles on your specified distance, and you canter your horse down over the poles, and then you're able to see how close am I to, say, a 5-stride canter distance. How close am I to the 5 strides? Does the horse do 5 even strides? Because it depends on the day what you're looking for. Most show jumpers are looking for 5 even strides. Eventers are sometimes looking for something different, or certainly I am anyway. Sometimes I'm coming down over these poles, and I'm actually looking for the horse to come down in 4 big ones and a little scramble for the last stride. So the last stride is short.
Yep.
Mainly because eventing wise, for me anyway, and I don't know if everyone else agrees with this, but it's what I do anyways, I don't want the horse to arrive at the fence in the perfect stride in training all the time.
Yeah.
Because if they arrive at the perfect stride in training all the time, then when they get into trouble, they've never practiced it. So you got to create the circumstances where they come in on a short one, when they come in on a long one. Ideally, eventing, we actually want them to get usually good and close to the fence so they have enough projection to get up and over, especially if it's a big scary thing. So I suppose it's all about evaluating where you're at and seeing where you need to develop your skills in. Like my trainer is big for, she always says, I want the horses to chip in sometimes, because there's sometimes when they'll need to chip in. So she will set up exercises so that the horse will end up chipping in. And it's not like, don't get me wrong, we're not trying to trick them or anything, but it's just sometimes that will be necessary. I don't know, is that what you found yourself, Dennis?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So, and I think it's important to just really think that we're not looking for perfect performance all the time. We're looking for improvement.
And confidence, improving confidence, so they get into those situations that are a bit tricky and they just go, oh, it's easy. I can get out of this.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll come in and come out real nice. Sometimes they'll have to scramble out of it. And when they have to scramble out of it, you don't want them to lose themselves and have a meltdown, because that's how you end up impaled on a fence.
Yes.
If it's show jumping, it's grand, it'll fall down. If it's dressage, sure, those arena boards, if you land on them, you'll be all right. But if you land on or in a ditch or a scary chicaner, you're in trouble.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Now, just going on, about variety now, and it's all right if you're an eventer. You're doing everything anyway. You're giving your horse lots of variety and doing different things on different days. But when you say about variety will develop your specific discipline, what if you're a dressage rider? What sort of variety? What if you're a show jumper? Tell us a little bit more about that.
We'll start on dressage because I have a pet peeve with dressage riders and lots of dressage trainers. So there's a few trainers over here that say, oh God, we can't put the dressage horses over a pole.
Yeah.
Because what if they stand on the pole and the pole rolls?
Yep.
And I'm standing there listening to these people going, really? Really? Like you're going to develop your dressage horse without poles? Or we won't hack them because they have to be on a surface. And it just doesn't compute for me. Like I always think of some of the things for dressage horses is you need them to extend, you need them to stretch their stride. I just don't know how I would go about doing that if I couldn't use a pole.
Yep.
And it just gives the horse a focus. It gets them looking down. It gets them stretching. I suppose that's what I think of dressage horses. Dressage horses, the best place to train, well, anything, I think, is out hacking. So for example, shoulder in, leg yield, traver in particular, I always do on the way home. Yep. Because my horse is much more positive in the movement. It means the traver is always much better. Now, look, you have to do it in the arena as well, because that's the job of the dressage rider. But if you can give the horse the feeling and, create the circumstances out hacking that they get the right feeling, you can totally change the game. So, and the other thing I think all dressage horses should do is jump. It doesn't have to be anything big. They can be little cavaletti height, even 50 centimeters. But especially if you're getting up towards the Grand Prix, for example, you've got to do canter pirouettes. And what do you need the horse to do for a canter pirouette? You need them to rock back onto their hocks. Mm-hmm. Really easy way of doing that. Pop them over a little fence. They have to rock back and over the fence. Rock back, rock forward, rock back, rock forward. And I think it's like you and I often say when we're chatting it's about creating the circumstance. It's about making it easy for the horse to figure out what it is they're doing. And the best way to do that is to put the feeling into their body by whatever means necessary in an ethical way. And, sometimes popping over a fence is the way to do it. Show jumping, generally speaking, I think the flat work that show jumpers do is generally actually quite good now because you can't get away with it. Mm-hmm. In the current show jumping courses, in years and years ago, before I was coaching or probably even riding, the show jumping courses, you watch the videos of them, they're much, they're bigger and scarier, all right, but they're not as technical. Yep. And I think the show jumpers do spend a lot of time, certainly if you take Ireland's Cian O'Connor, he has a dressage trainer and dressage rider who rides his horses and teaches him on his horses to make sure that the flat work is properly installed. And they do things like they do shoulder in, they do leg yield. I remember him talking at a demo he was doing a demo with one of Ireland's riders, Heike Holstein, and she rides some of his horses for him. And that crossover has created a really powerful schooling change for him. Yep. And this was about 5 years ago. And he's still there competing at the top level. People might not always agree with the way he trains, but he's still there and he's doing a job. Yeah. And then, as you said, with eventing, the bases are generally covered. But I think it's different with eventing because we have to link those things together in a different way. The dressage directly relates to the show jumping. The show jumping and the cross country are directly related. And they have to be able to cope with all that doing their dressage when someone's coming flying past from the cross country course. And, they've got to be able to compartmentalize.
Yes. And I think, you did talk before about ethical training and thinking about the mental well-being of the horse to have that variety within their training. Yeah.
And then I lunge, all my horses lunge a lot as well. I think it's just important that you don't, I suppose one of the major reasons why I hack and do all sorts of variety stuff is I get kind of bored as well. Like I couldn't be doing it going round and round. So there's loads of memes on Facebook of like dressage horse cartoons sitting on the couch talking to their supposed therapist. Oh, if I had to see another 20-meter circle. And it's so true. Like dressage riders, just lots of them who haven't seen the big picture yet are just going round and round and round and round and round and round. The poor horses are bored out of their face.
Yeah. I suppose it's a safer, to some degrees. It's a bit of a safer sport. There's less adrenaline if the horse is just getting bored. But then if the horse does get a big fright, they can get a bit stirred up as well, or riding, if they're used to being ridden in the arena all the time and all of a sudden they've got to go out or got to be ridden out in the big open area, at a competition or along a trail or something, there can be a big problem there if they're not used to that sort of riding.
Yeah, I was at another actually interesting training day. Now you mentioned that, with a guy called Adam Kemp. He's a dressage trainer in the UK, and he's an interesting and rather sarcastic individual, but he's quite brilliant. And what he said is, like, what's interesting now these days is that he's a bit older than me. Is that you have to train horsemanship to people now.
Yes.
Like people come to him to do a PSG or an Intro 1. They can't ride. They haven't had the experience of hunting or hacking out or whatever. They've only ridden in the arena. Some of them have never even tacked up their horse. Yet they're competing to PSG. It's mental. Absolutely mental. Anyway.
Yes,
sorry.
Yes. That's all right. I can see we can talk about this quite a lot more, the horsemanship that's required and how it affects your riding. If you've got that basic horsemanship and understanding of horse behaviour, then that just helps you so much more, just the way that the horse has grown a hand taller and got their ears pricked up watching it something go by. You think, I'll just mount up when that's gone past. I won't do it right now, just waiting that couple of seconds because you're watching body behaviour. And
Absolutely.
Anyway, tell us about Stars and Wishes. Bring us something magical.
Okay, right. It's like the frame of reference. This, I think, is something that's come up in nearly every chat. I think that for every training session, every riding session, especially if it's gone arse over tip, it's really important that you look back on it and you find 2 stars and a wish. So the first star is your small star. So that's one skill, one thing that went well. And it can be something really, really small. Like, for example, I have a client I teach, and she always has her left hand higher. Her horse is a bit of a rat bag. As well. And sometimes that is one of the things that I will point out if she cannot find a small star. Your left hand was lower.
Okay. Yep.
Or something small like that. Secondly, you have your wish, and your wish is something that you wish you could improve. Like, for me, one of my wishes is nearly always, I wish I could have a calmer focus, because my focus is often quite manic. I have quite an obsessive personality. So it's like when I was talking earlier about the walk, I got to learn you to walk. It's because of that obsessive personality that I was going to learn my horse to walk instead of moving away and coming back. And then your big star is something that went really well. So, for example, if you're working over trot poles and your horse starts to get that, you start getting that feeling of the shoulder extending and the horse lifting. That might be the skill you developed in you and your horse, is the ability to create that stretch in the shoulder.
Yep. It's interesting, we've talked about it, teaching children and using the stars and wishes at the end of each session. And I talked to you about it a while ago, and then did a coaching clinic for a week. So every lesson, the coaches are out and they're teaching their lessons, and often trainees riding for them. And then at the end of each lesson, we started doing the stars and wishes. And first of all, Larrabit, can't we just do like a sandwich feedback sandwich, which is what we'd normally do. And one of the girls, said, "Oh no, I'll do stars and wishes," and they started doing stars and wishes, and then everyone started doing stars and wishes, and it really changed. They're still self-evaluating. They're still saying, right, this is better, but it changed it into a less critical type of atmosphere, into a more of a hopeful, I can get this done type atmosphere, if that makes sense.
Well, like what I say to the kids is that, like, horse riding is life preparation, okay? And there's enough people in the world who are trying to cut you down, especially if you're doing something different, which I generally am. There's enough people trying to cut you down that you should be trying to build yourself up. And again, it's from the kids that the stars and wishes came, and I'm so glad that they came and said, oh, we do this in school. And I went, oh my God, that's such a great idea. And and the important thing is, I think, is as we go through, and as coaches in particular, you've got to be looking outside your little box to see what's going on somewhere else, so that you can really help and add to your clients' learning. I suppose that's what I'm always trying to do. Not always succeeding, because sometimes I can be a right grumpy old bugger when I'm teaching, but I try not to be.
I think if we're all continually trying to improve, we're going to make the world a better place.
Absolutely.
Brendan, if people would like to contact you, what's the best way?
And the best way is to go to our website, berginequine.com. There's you can email us from there. We also have a very active Facebook page, Bergin Equine at Bramley Hedge Farm. So I suppose that's the best way to link in. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. Don't try to ring, because usually I'm up to my eyes. Email is the best way to the website, because I will get back to you.
Okay, then. And if you've missed that, just go to horsechats.com, search for Brendan or search for Bergin. Or I think if you even went to Horse Chats and searched for Stars and Wish, I think you'd probably get that as well.
I'm going to try that.
yeah, I think so. Stars and Wish. I haven't got wishes because it's only one wish, but I think Stars and Wish, yeah. All right, wonderful to talk to you, Brendan, and looking forward to catching up with you again.
Thanks, Glenys. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.